right. So who tends to interview you?
I go on a lot of political podcasts or, uh, women's rights stuff, feminist stuff, or the opposite of that. Like for some reason, the manosphere, loves to interview me because they consider me like I don't know, a friendly feminist, or they like to talk to lesbians, I guess. We have a lot of things in common, a lot of things not in common, so it makes a good conversation. And then I've done tons of interviews when I was running for office, so those types of getting my name out there stuff. And then I've done ones for my day job type of thing where I do sales coaching, cold call coaching. So there's some stuff out there with me talking about business development, that type of stuff too. So pretty much all the gamut of different shows. I pretty much go on anything. I'm not
That's
really
so cool.
too
Yeah,
picky as
I'm
long as
very
I feel like we can have a conversation. Doesn't really matter. Yeah.
okay, right. So you don't want like an activist trying to like get you on things. That's
I
a
mean,
fun
yeah, if it's like a
conversation.
gotcha, I mean, I can handle those. I've definitely been on some like that. And usually I can turn it around and kind of become friends with them, and we've like become friendly afterwards. Or I know how to kind
Wow.
of, I don't know, I just have a way of staying nuanced enough to be able to talk to almost anybody, I feel. I guess the worst one I had was with the Willamette Weekly, I think is what it's called, or Willamette Week is what it's called. A paper here that interviewed the candidates running for office, and
Mm-hmm.
he did just only throw gotcha questions at us,
Oh, wow.
especially the challengers that were challenging the incumbent. He was a little softer with her. He did throw a couple things at her, but he was just a typical gotcha journalist, and he got me on some county that technically wasn't in my district, and was like, well, how are you going to relate to the people in I forget what the county is, and I gave just like an answer on how I can relate to people, and then he's like, that's not even in your district, see, like you shouldn't even be running. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, whatever, dude. So that was probably one time I got pretty upset, but that was like mainstream media.
Right.
So I've mostly been on independent media shows, which are typically more friendly and open, and we just have actual conversations rather than them looking for that spicy kind of soundbite that can get them views and clicks and add money.
Yeah. I
Other
kind of
people
like
are
having
like
very
that.
few clicks. Oh, sorry. What?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
I kind of like having so few clicks because like there's not a lot of agenda involved, and I guess this is kind of a series on people who I find courageous. And I think kind of like one of the biggest courage these days is just being able to say what's on your mind and being able to speak freely. And I feel like it's even whether I agree with people or disagree with people, I definitely love the ability to just say what you actually think and without apologizing for it and without
Yep.
sounding like you're an HR representative. And I feel like if you could do that, it improves your life significantly. And that's what I found in my own, development is figuring out how to just say what you feel with like integrity, right? Not, kind of just being able to express yourself. And it's been very helpful. Have you always had this ability to just say what's on your mind? Like, were you born with it? Were you born that way?
Yeah, possibly. My family has a lot of stories of me, saying, crazy things at, young ages where I probably shouldn't have, been that sophisticated to say, what I said. I mean, my dad has one story where I was really young, he says. I mean, really didn't talk that much. And I was crying one night, and I guess he did the night shift with me. Like my mom would work nights and he would work in the day, and they would kind of take care of me those shifts. And he was put me to bed, and he was tired, and I was like kind of screaming, and he came in and he was just like frustrated, and he's like, stop being such a baby. And I guess I'd like kind of like sat up and was like, but I am a baby. And like he was just like shocked because he was like, first of all, I didn't say much at all at that point. I wasn't talking a ton, but it was like just, that I was sophisticated enough to be sarcastic or like kind of throw him like a smart ass remark back. He was just like
That's amazing.
stunned.
How old are you?
Maybe around a year. I don't know. I was pretty young. Like, yeah. So yeah, I've just always kind of said, I guess, whatever I thought without caring.
I smell something burning.
Oh, that's
From the
not good.
stove.
Yeah,
I'll be
please
right
go
back.
check that. Yeah.
All right. Edamames are very sensitive.
Okay.
Okay, so you basically um, you were started speaking your mind from a very young age.
Yeah, I'd say so. Never really had a problem with saying how I feel too much, which gets me in trouble, but
What kind
oh
of
well.
trouble?
All kinds of trouble. I mean, social trouble, just, I always had a kind of some problems with like cliques, and um yeah, just I guess being a kid, I was more of like kind of independent and I was seen as a leader in a way, so people would kind of flock towards me and want me to be a part of their groups, from a pretty young age. But quickly they would learn that I didn't really play nice with others. I guess I would just say how I felt about whoever. I don't really go with the hierarchies. So, yeah, it's hard to think of specific examples there, but I guess I mean it's just yeah, it's always been tough for me to be part of groupthink, and just stick to whatever, certain people are supposed to do, whether that's, students or certain identities or, whatever else. It's just
Yeah,
always been, yeah, not something that I care too much about because my values are about authenticity and honesty. And if I don't speak my mind, I feel physically ill. And I just feel sick if I am not being myself at some point. I can play the game for a bit, and I'm pretty good at it. But then at some point, if I just reach my point where I can't do it anymore, whether it's in a job or in a social group or otherwise, if it's not right, if I don't feel like it's just, then I'll just have to say something. So it's gotten me in trouble with
yeah.
yeah, a few different groups. Yeah,
It's interesting. Like, do you know Nina Paley, the artist?
I don't think
Uh,
so.
she's also but she has a Heterodorks podcast with Corinna Cone, and
Okay.
so she was saying she expressed a similar thing of just not being able to lie, like just almost like I just it just feels so off to me, and obviously
Yeah.
that comes at a cost. But it's almost like I guess there are some people, maybe like myself, that was comfortable just maybe more lying by omission, kind of a lot of self-censoring, and then I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I
Yeah.
kind of like the effect, where it seems like you're more of a natural.
Yeah. Actually, my wife like can't lie at all. She's really bad at it. I think I can lie. I just like don't enjoy it. I
Right.
think that I can play the game and I'm pretty good at acting, but yeah, it just kind of makes me sick on the inside. And I can hold it in for a while, but at some point, yeah, it does have to come out. And but the reason why people lie or just at least omit things, I think in social situations is there's so much benefit to doing that. It's like immediate benefit to going along with whatever the group is saying or doing. You get immediate, praise,
Yeah.
or just, friends or, I mean, there's so much that comes with it. I think that's why people are maybe like, it happens in everything, like bandwagon fans for sports, for example. If a team's doing really well, I have a cousin, and he's passed away now, but he's like an older cousin, but he would be like a bandwagon fan. So everybody would always call him that, like, because, my family had certain teams they liked, but he was like the bandwagon guy. So whoever was doing well that year, he would wear their jersey and he'd be like, yeah, I'm rooting for the Patriots or whatever. And they're like, you're not a Patriots fan. Like, what are you talking about? Like, so it's
Right.
kind of like that, but you get the immediate benefit of being like a winner, right? If you just go with the flow, and it's very, exciting, and you get to be on the
Right.
winning team and have a bunch of friends and everybody's winning together. So I think that's why most people would tend to just, go along with things. It just makes their life immediately easier. So when you
Yeah.
are the opposite and you're willing to, really say how you feel, or really like whatever you like, or, have whatever opinions you have, you're going to get a lot of pushback, I think. But
Hmm.
it's more rewarding over time, because, you have that long-term reward of, let's say it's a sports team, just to keep the analogy. I mean, if the Bears finally win the Super Bowl or something, then you're so happy because that you played the long game. You were there the
Yeah.
whole time and you never wavered, and your love for the underdog. And then finally, like, they win and you're like, see, like I told you, like, it was gonna happen. And now I
Yeah.
get to enjoy this, like, long awaited satisfaction, rather than just this fleeting, quick little wins, which are like dopamine, which can be good and can be nice, but it's not as satisfying.
Yeah. I get the sense, like, when you use lying as a strategy to make friends, like the friends that you attract range from not being really great friends for you, or, like, then you have to keep up that lie,
Yeah.
that presentation that you made in order to win that friend. You have to kind of keep that up, and then you have to keep up
Mm.
the different lies you have for each of the friends
Right.
and
Right.
different selves. Like, so, like, being just one self, and those, they're going to be people who like it and those who don't, and the people who actually like it and you like them, like, those are solid friendships.
Yeah, and that's great, and I mean, it's kind of how you have to be. I mean, I think that there's, the old adage of, your old friends are gold or whatever, like, and, new friends are silver. So it's like, you want like a little bit of both, but,
Hmm.
I think that if you are generally a consistent, person and have values that, always shine through, then you will keep, your old friends, even if like other, superficial things might change. You might, have differences of opinions. You might have, you might move, you might change, all kinds of things about yourself. But if you're at the core, the same person, then they really do appreciate that. And I
Yeah.
think that comes up, for myself, even though I've, changed my ideology and my viewpoints on many issues, I haven't really changed, the core of who I am. So I
Right.
think that the friends that do stick around, despite, differences of opinion, I think those are, the true friends, or those are the true, companions or allies or whatever you want to call them. When, they need you or you need them, they know that you're the rock and they can count on you,
Yeah.
to be authentic and to not, be wavering, or have some false opinion.
Yeah. You are Dwayne the Rock Johnson, in a way. Uh, uh, as far as politics, I get the sense that politicians, uh, are challenged to be genuine because they need a win over a mass amount of people, right? So the strategy of the way we make friends, of like being our true selves, doesn't work for politics when you don't just need a few votes, you need the majority of the
Yeah.
votes. So how did it
Yeah.
translate into politics for you?
It's tough. I think that with politics, the issues that are more core, and more, I guess, populist and more principled, tend to attract me more. Um, you know, that's why I think that you've seen figures like Trump and Bernie Sanders and, other populist, candidates, uh, garner a lot of support, because what they're speaking to isn't, so narrow. They're really speaking to emotions and deep feelings and deep, ideas. And so even if they change their mind on something, overall, they're still hitting on those emotions that are a little bit deeper. So even if
Mm.
let's say whatever, let's say Trump suddenly comes out, he's like, yeah, I'm actually pro-choice, and like last
Mm-hmm.
time I ran on being pro-life. But this is why I'm pro-choice because XYZ, but he's going with like the popular, feeling and emotion and opinion behind it because it's like, that's, so to play politics in that way, it's tough. I mean, I think it's just comparing, like Trump is just such a good example because there's so much content on him, but comparing like 2016 Trump to where he did after court evangelicals, and, he's standing in front of the church with the Bible and it looks kind of like lame and fake to people, and it doesn't seem authentic to like a
Yeah.
2022 campaign of Trump where he just doesn't care anymore.
Yeah.
And he can say and do whatever he wants because he's already won over enough people. Like his base has grown so far that he doesn't need to chop off, a certain amount. So I think that with politics, it's tricky for sure. Like you either can, play towards the party platforms, which can be very rigid,
Yeah.
in order to get like a large enough base, or you can have your own base that's established for whatever reason, whether it's just name recognition and fame, or that's just who you've chopped off, or it happens to be a particular race where there's no one else running that's appealing, so your base gets larger. So I think that that's all, things to consider. But politicians in general, especially these days when they come up as inauthentic, yeah, they immediately do lose people. People would rather see somebody who is honestly telling you that they are like, the worst person like ever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but they can help you for XYZ and they have this way that they can do something for you, then have someone, completely lie. Like I think it was, what was his name? George, what was the guy's name? George, that he
Santos.
won his, yeah, right. And he was just
Yeah.
saying like whatever, like throughout the whole campaign to get donors or support. I think he
Right.
said he was like Jewish, at one point. Because like,
Right.
and then like he was just like, he said everything, like, and it all turned out to be a complete lie, like once he's in office, all these things that he was saying, and and then he lost people immediately. Whereas if he would have been, frank and honest, I mean, would he have won? I don't know, because that's plain politics. Maybe he wouldn't have been able to get the donors and the support and the votes that he would have needed if he just was up
Right.
front. But now he's lost people forever,
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a short-term and a long-term game with politics. You have someone like Vivek Ramaswamy, who I think is personally building a brand for himself to be kind of the next figure in the Republican Party. So he's
Mm-hmm.
being as authentic as he can, I think. He's not
Yeah.
like supernatural like a Trump figure or like a Bernie where he has that kind of natural politician.
Very
Um,
polished.
yeah, he's very polished, but I do think that he is being like as authentic as he can with like how he really feels about things. I do think he's like trying to establish that as his brand because he's playing a longer game. Like he could not say things like, I don't know, God is real, for example, or there are two genders, or he could like just not mention those things if he wanted to, because the truth is he's not going to win anyway. So he could just play like more established, but he's really trying to be like, no, I'm like the next up and coming, like authentic populist after Trump. Like it's like
Right.
I'm in that category. So I'm going to say all this stuff, take the heat because I know I'm not going to get anywhere anyway. But when Trump's gone, that's like my base, and so
Mm.
he's playing to that authentic base that wants that kind of next younger, more energetic kind of Trump populist once Trump
Right.
is out. So it's so, it's so many levels to it. It just depends on how you want to play it. But I think that authenticity will be what wins coming up, in the next election cycles for
Yeah.
quite some time, because that's where we're at. We're exhausted and we just want people that are real.
Right. And I saw in your bio that you're a libertarian.
Yeah, I'm currently registered as a libertarian. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you think the party? What do you think of the party itself? No, like I feel like a lot of people, in running my business, nothing makes me want to be more of a libertarian when I get like the most
Huge
detailed
tax
annoy.
bill.
Yeah, and I'm like fine with taxes. Like I don't think taxes are theft per se. I'm unless you think so, I'm
Yeah.
curious. But like just like the invasiveness and the guide it, like the guidelines. I kind of want them out of my business a little more.
Yeah. Yeah, the bureaucracy and the red tape.
Yeah, I hate bureaucracy.
Yeah, the
So it's
government loves
definitely attractive.
bureaucracy. Yeah.
As a party, though, what do you think of the? And do you think taxation is theft?
I I do think most forms of taxation could be considered theft because you are actually forcing, someone's labor in a way. You're forcing them to give up a portion of their labor,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
then that they may now have no stake in where that portion goes.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, it's very philosophical, but in that sense, there is an element of theft to taking someone's money before they even have it and then doing who knows what with it without any accountability as to
Mm-hmm.
where it's going. So, I mean, there would be ways that taxation could be considered, not theft, or less, like theft. If, for example, we could choose exactly where our dollars went, like we could
Mm-hmm.
be like, no, none to war, no, none to like
It's
that part,
going to my own
or,
nonprofit, which gives
I mean, or
food
something. I
to
mean,
my
but
son. Yeah.
it's so impossible because it's like this large pool of money and you don't know where it goes. And then so that there's arguments to say that if you have no say in what's done with your labor, then that could be, theft of your labor or your contribution. So argument is to be made. I'm not a full anarchist, but I consider myself what they call a minarchist. I want the government to
Minarchist?
have, yeah.
Was
So
that?
essentially, you just want the government to do its basic functions, which is to protect the rights of, the citizens, which is like right to private property. So, you want to have some sort of police or military, just
Mm-hmm.
like the base kind of executive functions, but you don't want the government to have a say in, essentially every single aspect of one's life, or to be, taking money from you in the form of taxes or otherwise. You'd want to minimize that as much as possible or eliminate that. But you're not like completely anarchist. You do see some role for government. You're not like, let's get rid of the police entirely, or let's get
Mm.
rid of the government entirely. And that would be more like an anarchist, which many loud libertarians on the internet are actually anarchists. They're like,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it may seem like more libertarians are like that, but actually I think that the party is more filled with minarchists or people that are a little more nuanced and have, want some role of the government or aren't against, every single aspect of government. I mean, as a party as a whole, it's very difficult to say because it's so broken up. Like each state has its own party that has its
Mm-hmm.
own bylaws, that has its own board, that has its own delegates,
Yeah.
and they're not necessarily attached to the national party at all, which is very interesting to me. You can be a member of like your state party or be registered as a libertarian, but being a member of the national party is another thing.
Mm.
We don't choose like our nominee in a traditional way. We have delegates that are chosen by the
Mm-hmm.
board from each state, and then the delegates go to wherever the convention is and then decide who the nominee is. It's very interesting because I've never been a part of a party like this. I was a Democrat for a long time, or I was not part of any party and just an independent or declined to
Mm-hmm.
state. So it's interesting to see. I mean, I think that the party needs some work. I think that we could be more organized. We could focus more on, electoral victories and actually moving, certain policies forward and being, I don't want to say less principled, but less dogmatic. Sometimes if that gets something done, more willing to
Mm.
work with other groups.
Yeah.
And I think that the Mises Caucus is trying to do that, but they need some help. I think that they're, it's so broken up. I mean, if you can imagine, like, people that have a libertarian philosophy don't tend to like all want to agree on everything and, have this
Yeah. I
sort of
imagine organizing is not their
yeah.
strong suit.
Right. Like, how are you going to be like, okay, I'm a total individual, but also I'm going to be like a collectivist. Like when we need to
Yeah.
get, it's very difficult to do that. So having a libertarian party is actually kind of hilarious. I mean, in a lot of ways,
Right.
because how are you going to really do that? How are you going to have, like a political party at all? So I think a lot of libertarians, even though they're registered as libertarian, are against just the whole notion of parties
Yeah.
in general. So it makes for some fun debates and everything, and some interesting characters that'll come along, but it's not super productive. So I hope that, they can become more productive, because I do think there's a place for the Libertarian Party to at least have like full ballot access. They need to get to 5% though, in the general, to get the
Hmm.
funding that we need to, sustain that. So we'll see. But it's interesting. I don't know if I'll always stay with the party or not. I'm kind of more of a not be involved with party type of person, but I'm with them right now because they've been right on issues that I care about at the moment. Like they've been right on war and mandates and gun rights and just certain things that I
Hmm.
think are pertinent at the moment. So it's a good
Yeah.
tribe for me to be with at this particular moment.
Yeah. Are you a gun fan?
I actually am now. Yeah, actually
Uh,
switched.
you got some guns?
Thoughts on that. I have one. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
so cool. What kind?
I just have a revolver, just like a
Okay.
everyday carry. Yeah,
Okay. Do you feel safer with it?
I do. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And you live in
Like,
Portland,
yeah,
or
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
I imagine they have strict gun laws, no?
Sort of. Oregon is very gun friendly overall. Multnomah County and Portland are more strict, so it did take
Oh,
me
I
several
see.
months to get my concealed carry license and go through all that. But eventually I was able to get it, and I, buy a gun, and that part was actually easy once I already went through all the training and
Mm-hmm.
had my background checked and all that stuff. I was able to pass it. But yeah, it was interesting. It was a lot more complicated than I thought it
Yeah.
would be, for sure.
People make it sound like it's such an easy process, but it doesn't sound like an easy process.
No,
No.
not at least if you want to do it legally. I mean, there's loopholes, of course. There's gun show loophole and like all other ways that you could get around things. But if you do it the right way and you go through the right training and get the, license, then yeah, it's a pain and it takes a long time. And, I learned a lot though. I mean, you learn a ton, which gun fanatics will say like the NRA isn't good actually. So it's really weird because like people that are against guns don't like the NRA, and actually like hardcore gun fanatics don't like the NRA.
Oh, I had no idea.
But yeah,
Because
but I
they're too
actually,
conservative about gun rights?
because they're too, you know, they're not as radical as they want them to be, like
Okay, which would be like no background checks
right,
or
just like
yeah.
complete constitutional carry, and they think they get too involved, and they're lobbyists like trying to whatever wiggle their little things, and they just think it's like a corrupt organization, but they actually
Yeah.
do most of like the gun training. And I learned quite a bit through going through like their basic programs, just about what's legal, what's not, what's safe, what's not, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Like, there's a lot of things to consider if you're ever need to use your gun, and that's like, the you don't want to. You hope that you never have to.
Yeah.
But but if you do, then you have to know your rights, the laws, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and yeah, it's been very interesting to learn about that.
Yeah. So curious about your day job. So I'm a little all over the place. That tends to be how I think.
That's
Both
okay.
both you and I are Vyvanse buddies, apparently, based on your
Yeah, I
tweet.
know. I just like lowered my dose too, which is,
Okay,
I mean, good and bad. I mean,
I hear
it's
it.
like
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't like this as much because I'm not getting like as, that like little zippity doo dah. But I also could sleep better and I'm a little less on edge. So it's kind of like I'm trying to find
Right.
that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be challenging.
Hmm.
Um. So how did you mentioned that you're a cold call coach, or like you have a day job of what's that like? What's your tell me a little bit more about your day job.
Yeah, sure. I won't say where I'm working exactly at the moment, but I mean I've just been in business development.
People are after you.
I'm sorry?
Are people like are you? are you like people try to harass you or something like that?
They might. I just don't want to make it easier on them, you
No,
know.
no,
I
no,
don't
of
want to
course
be,
not. Yeah,
but also,
definitely not.
for the company, their sake, I don't tend to advertise like their name, just to keep
Oh,
things,
okay.
these are my opinions on or my own kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
mine's you.
it's not very hard to find out. It's not like it's like super hard to find these things out or anything. But yeah, I was an insurance agent for most of the pandemic, and then I moved into business development, so B2B software sales,
Yeah.
and just built a bit of a brand for myself on LinkedIn and around that. And then I had a
Mm-hmm.
business, which I recently decided to step back from for a time. Just was too much for me to manage. But I was essentially doing cold call coaching and business development consulting. And yeah, I enjoy it. I like teaching people. So I like that side of it. I just like don't love running a business, I guess. It just like it's just the admin and all that stuff is just getting to
Yeah, it
me.
could be a pain
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
But it was fun. I got to work with some really cool people like Josh Braun, who's a pretty famous cold call coach, and we did some trainings together. So
Yeah.
yeah, I enjoy it. I just have a particular style that's super relaxed. For doing cold outreach. Yeah, it's okay. It's not like super exciting. I love the creative stuff that I do more,
Uh-huh.
but I try to make it fun. I try to make it a bit creative, but really it's just reaching out to people completely cold, either through email or LinkedIn or through
Uh-huh.
calls, and trying to get them to set a meeting with a salesperson. So I'm just doing the top of the funnel.
If
So
if there
yeah.
was one advice to give someone who wants to get good at cold reach outs, like
Mm-hmm.
what would that be?
One advice,
Yeah, like the top advice where you're
mhm.
like, if you know how to do this, you're gold.
Yeah, it's
Super
kinda tough.
reductive.
Yeah. I would say just, yeah, know who you're calling
Mm-hmm.
and why, and have a reason, that you feel confident in on why you're
Mm-hmm.
reaching out to that exact person at, you know, with that exact moment. So, know who you're speaking to and know who you're reaching out to.
So it doesn't seem like it's just totally vague.
Well, how do you mean?
Meaning like so it doesn't feel like, kind of like a auto dialer, like
Yeah, sort of. I guess it's just have a, perspective. They call it point of view. They call it different things in B2B sales. You can call it,
uh-huh.
why them, why now? That people say all kinds of different things for it, or show them you know them. But yeah, you really just want to understand their world, and I guess be curious about that. So, you don't have to be completely personalized and
Yeah.
whatever, ask them about their vacation or their dog or something. But, you just have to kind of understand basically who they are, what they do, and if, what their process is, and, be curious about it.
Yeah. I cold reached out to you. How did I do?
Yeah, I think you did fine. I'm here. So,
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to. It just comes down
All
to if
right.
it works or not. I am kind of a lay down. So I don't know. Like, I'm not, I'm not like the hardest person to do cold outreach to. If it's like,
Okay. Maybe
even,
you have
yeah.
empathy for the
I guess,
cold
yeah.
outreach people.
Maybe I'm just kind of a lay down in general with sales. Like my wife will get annoyed because I'll just see like an ad, or somebody will come up and she'll be like, no, no, just like don't. I'm like, oh, but
Shoot.
come on,
Shoot.
and I'm like, because it's just like it's so easy for me to just get sold on anything.
Yeah. Question. What do you think? I found you on X
Mhm.
slash Twitter. Um, and you popped out because you were saying interesting things that you just don't see a lot, and that's the accounts I tend to gravitate towards, like people whose opinions are just different. Uh, and I'm curious what you think about the state of Twitter X. Like, how do you think it's going? What do you think the direction? What do you think about the direction? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I think it's better. I think that it's less controlled by one side of the aisle. I think that it was, pretty left leaning for a while under
Mm-hmm.
the previous, I guess, administration or whatever you want to call it. Trust
Regime.
and safety. Yeah. I think that when he eliminated, 80% of the staff, I think that was probably a good move. I mean, there's things that fell off and there's things that, weren't being taken care of, I'm sure. But I think that he needed to really kind of clean house because there were too many, ideological interests, I think, just like controlling things to where there was not enough innovation, able to
Mm-hmm.
happen. So there's some positives. It's definitely cleared out like a lot of people that hate Elon and a certain side of things, which can be kind of nice because I think people do feel more free to speak how they want to speak now if there's not like, the HR types, everywhere
Mm-hmm.
kind of watching things like they were before. They're kind of like, it's kind of cool to not be on X now because of Elon. It's kind of like people have flocked away. But I
But
do
where did
think
they
that
go?
they just, I don't know.
I don't
Who
think
knows?
anyone's on Threads, right?
Yeah, they were for a while. I don't know. I don't know if they are now. Everybody tries to copy Twitter, but it was just like it's so unique and had, has this loyal user base to where you can't because there's only so many people like that will actually like that kind of format and they're mostly men. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like 72% men on X or Twitter. Um and you just can't really replicate, I guess, that on any other platform because people don't have the bandwidth for another one. And it's like the
Yeah,
same group of people that you'd be trying to get to. And it
exactly.
just doesn't work. And like women tend to be more like Instagram or TikTok. They
Right.
like pictures or like short form videos. That type of thing works well. And then just like men just tend to like the memes and the short form writing and the little like, quirks and comments and things like that that just are like interesting or like the news, the the quick feed news, which both females and men can like, but of course, but I think it's just a very particular type of platform where you can reach anyone very quickly that's on there. You can tag them and like they'll probably see it if they're an active, X or Twitter
Yeah.
user, which is crazy. It's not like you can do that on really any other platform. You can try to tag somebody or reach out to them and they don't care. They're not really on it. They have their team doing it, but like X is so
Right.
personal
It
that you can
is.
reach these people. Yeah. So I think it's just so different. I think that Jack did like a good job initially on making it a very, very different social media platform. Just the
Right.
short form platform works really well. And I think Elon's trying to make it like the everything app, which I don't know if it'll work or not. I mean, I think it's a nice lofty goal, but he's done some cool things. I mean, it's the only platform that's ever paid me so quickly to write.
Oh, so
I'm
they
actually
actually pay. They pay for your content. Like, how does that work?
it's an ad share. It's a
Okay.
ad revenue share. So if you have a certain amount of impressions and certain amount of you have to be premium, you have to be a premium user and it's other premium users that are viewing or clicking on ads on your page or your posts, you will get
Okay.
a certain percentage. And some people are making thousands and thousands, which is great
I
for
know.
them. Like it's like life-changing money for some of them. I make a little bit, I make a few hundred, but it's still nice that you're,
Yeah.
you
Like, what
know,
other
I'm
social media platform actually pays people money? Like, it just seems like
none.
something you give to.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just go on there for free and people just advertise to you and they make all the money and you just keep doing it, because you're
Right.
addicted. But it's nice that, with X at least you can earn a little bit and feel like, okay, this is, something
Yeah.
worthwhile. So we'll see. I mean, I think that it's still the best platform out there. I'm concerned that they, allow 13-year-olds on and also have pornography is just allowed.
Hmm.
So that's concerning. And I know
Yeah.
that the EU has some problems with X, so they're going through some issues there. I
Right.
don't know if like Europe will continue to like have X as a platform, which would be a huge hit to them. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. I mean, I think if Elon's keeps being creative, like it could last and be a good platform. But I don't know if it'll ever be the everything app. I don't know if we're ready for that.
Yeah. Um. Also, something that was interesting. that appealed to me from your profile was um, basically like discussing the lesbian community. So curious if you could reflect on the state of the lesbians. How are they doing? Like, what are the challenges they're facing,
Yeah, I
and
think,
uh, and
yeah.
what's gonna be?
I think lesbians are dying out um, in a lot of ways, which is concerning. I don't think, I mean, I personally think it's a biological reality that certain, mammals and, humans are going to be homosexual. So I don't think
Hmm.
there's like going to be less homosexuals or anything. But I do think that
Right, it's gonna be about 10%.
lesbian, yeah, it's usually about 10% total or
Hmm.
end up being homosexuals. There's different, whatever, there's different ranges or
Hmm.
otherwise. So, I mean, you might, so like 5%, I guess, if you want to split it between gay and lesbian, there might be, that percentage of, actual, homosexual women. But I do think that there's a few different problems in the community. I mean, one is absolutely, transgender ideology has taken over. And if males can transition and call themselves lesbians, and if on the other end, if butch women, which are a very important part of the lesbian community, are transitioning to become men or trans men, then that's a loss as well because they would consider themselves, men and not lesbians usually.
Mm.
So that's a loss to the community as well. And it's very sad because transitioning for a woman can be very detrimental to her health. So I do see a lot of lesbians that have, uh, ovarian cancer, things happening from the amount of testosterone that
Right,
they've
and
been
and I
pumping into
understand
them.
that even before there was an increase in trans identification among females, like testosterone among lesbians was not unheard of, correct? And it wasn't considered like transitioning, but it was just something that they would do. Am I making that up?
I've never heard of that. I mean, unless they were like a bodybuilder or
Uh-huh.
something, or it was something for their sport, I guess maybe. But I've never heard of lesbians taking in testosterone. I mean, some people say lesbians just naturally have more testosterone,
Right.
which could definitely be true. And I think there's some studies there, but I don't I don't think a lot of people were taking synthetic testosterone before
Mm-hmm.
all of this. I do think it's something to alleviate their, perceived dysphoria.
Yeah.
I think it's something different, but it's definitely I think it's like a 4 to 5 times increase of young women that are transitioning um, to male. This is like, youth, so girls.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done some longitudinal studies at this point, and I believe around 80% of those girls end up, telling or whatever, end up, admitting that they were gay or lesbian or bisexual or, some type of homosexuality. Um,
Uh-huh. The trans
so,
identified
mhm,
females uh,
yeah.
will not have been born straight.
Right. So yeah, they've
Okay.
done long enough studies now to show that these girls that are basically wanting to transition and think that they're actually boys, they're like tomboys, and then they decide, yeah, I want to be a boy. When enough time has gone by, whether they decide to medically transition or not, they were then surveyed, and then yeah, I'm a lesbian or I'm gay or I'm bisexual,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so that to me is you know, basically like you're just killing off lesbians. I mean, you're just that does not. If you're telling them they're going to become men, then they're no longer women who love women, and they're no longer proud of being a lesbian. They are then either like to themselves a heterosexual male, in their minds, or otherwise. And some of them call themselves gay men because they end up being heterosexual, but they've already transitioned. Um,
Right.
and so it's just, but that's, overall, it's just a loss for the community if it's 80% that are deciding they don't want to be proud to be, homosexual women.
Mm.
So to me, I think that there's that, and then there's the increase of gender women in our spaces, on our apps. Bars, the lesbian bars there was 200 lesbian bars in 1988, and now there's 20 in the US.
200. So wow. So
Mm-hmm.
that's quite a decrease.
Yeah. So it's not it's
And
not the
even
greatest
those
state of things.
spaces are trying to be,
They're
in
inclusive. Yeah.
yeah. So they will. Historically, would they let straight men into them? No, it was
No.
like a space for
No. Yeah, not at
women
all. Yeah, it was women
to.
only. They would have bouncers, and sometimes they'd have male bouncers if guys tried to get in, and we'd be like, get out of here. Like, it was very like exclusive, and that was the point.
Yeah, and
You
historically,
know.
gay bars, they
Mhm.
would allow straight women in, correct?
Uh, Not so much. That's also kind of newish, I think, to be
Oh,
more
okay.
inclusive. I mean, it's with the gay men. I mean, the women don't really want to be there, so it's kind of a little bit different, Like,
Oh,
it's
I
like,
thought it was like the place where they could go and not get hit on
yeah,
and just like
sometimes,
dance
but it's
without
not like
like guys
but it's not
grinding
like
on them.
the gay men aren't threatened by them. Let's just put it that way. Like, it's not, I guess it's
Right.
just a totally different issue. If you have all
100%.
women,
Yeah.
you don't want like straight men there because you know what they're there for. If you're like all dudes, you're not that threatened if there's like a straight woman there, she's not
Uh-huh.
trying to hit on you.
Right.
No, probably not. I mean, I guess it could happen, but yeah, it's just, it's weird.
Right. So I'm hearing like they're kind of threatened on both ends by women transitioning out who would have historically been lesbian,
Yeah.
and males who are identifying in, who like
Yeah.
the
Yeah, because
OG.
it's not
Yeah.
about gender, like, is the thing is, like, gender or gender expression is a totally different thing from sexuality. So it's never really been about that. Like, there's many lesbians that are only attracted to masculine women, like butch
Yeah.
women or masks or whatever you want to call them. They're only attracted to them.
Yeah.
So, it's not about gender. It was, and butch women were a very important part of the lesbian community. I mean, it's like they're like strong, more masculine. Like, it's just like you need like strong women if it's an all women community, like, who's gonna whatever, like, do the stuff that needs to be done. Like, you can't just have a bunch of like, femmes hanging out. And so it's not about that. So when you have like a man that's like, I'm gonna transition and then like look like feminine and look like a woman and then enter this community, it's like, well, we don't want that, like, it's not like,
Right. Like we were
we don't,
good.
yeah, we're not looking for that. Like, who exactly are you appealing to here? Because like, that's not a thing. Like, we don't want really more femmes. Like, we actually like would like more butches, like, in general.
Mm-hmm.
And there are like definitely, femme lesbians with femmes, there's femmes for femmes, and there's even butches for butches. But it's still like, if you say every single butch lesbian has to be like a trans man now, and they literally will ask, butch lesbians that. And I don't see any young butch lesbians. They're all of transition. They all have top surgeries. But they will ask, butch women that. They'll be like, oh yeah, what's your pronouns? Like, what do you go by? Are you like he or she? And it's like, what the hell, I mean, I think you can tell like the difference between a butch woman and a man. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
I don't think anybody ever had a problem with that really before. I mean, sometimes if they were super butch, it might be a little bit like, hey, sir, but no one really cared. I mean, I've even been called sir before, like when I had short hair, and like I would be like, whatever, just dress more like a boy. Sometimes I was called sir, but you didn't care. I mean, you
Yeah.
weren't like, it's not a big deal. Like, you just move on with your day. It's just like, somebody trying to be polite. And
Yeah.
fine. So it's just, there's not this community that we had. I think there was like a heyday before gay marriage, where it was great. I mean, there was like lesbian clubs, women only events. There was Dinah Shore, in Palm Springs every year. There were other
Mm-hmm.
women events all over the country. There was, in the 90s, like I said, there were like 200 lesbian bars. I mean,
And the
there's a
Dyke
heyday.
March is like
Mhm.
no longer a lesbian space, right?
The Dyke March.
Yeah, in like New York City or
I
elsewhere.
mean, every pride, I guess, has a dyke march, but yeah, it's completely inclusive now. I don't think, even Dinah Shore, which was always just for women for years and years. If you look on their website now, it says, yeah, we're inclusive of lesbians, bisexuals, I think it's like trans identifying women and even allies of lesbians, which is like, okay, that's just like dudes. I mean, so like friends of lesbians, like, okay, so that's everybody. It's just literally
Right.
everybody,
You know, but it's interesting because like exclusion is understood to be a bad thing, right? But any kind of entity that includes everyone, which sounds like the nice thing, like loses whatever identity it is. Like you can't have
Yeah.
you like it's almost like to be something, there needs to be a inclusion criteria and an exclusion criteria, right? So like if you were to
Yeah.
do a study on a population and you just included everyone, like you wouldn't get a
You
lot
learn
of important
nothing.
information, right?
Yeah, you
So
learn
it's like,
nothing. Yeah.
you know, I think it's almost like we kind of took on this idea of inclusion as a universal good because it's the word sounds nice, and
Yeah.
exclusion sounds mean because no one wants to be excluded, right? But like,
Sure.
you know, but anything that includes everyone is no longer that thing.
No.
And
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's like, how are you going to have any sort of club? Like, let's say you had a chess club and you're just like, yeah, but people can just play checkers. And it's like, okay, but like, what? Like, it's just like with anything, you have to be like,
Get
this
out of
is
here with
what
these
we're
little
doing here,
checkers. This is the chess
or like you
club.
can have like a tennis club and people are playing pickleball. Like, it's just like, okay, but no, you don't have the right racket. Like, what's going on? Oh, yeah, I'm playing pickleball. It's inclusive, right? It's like all,
Well, that's actually like a
you know,
major issue, the
right.
pickleball and pickleball exclusion,
Right.
you
It's a good
know, and
analogy.
tennis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. Wow. I could probably talk to you for many more hours, but I have a patient at 5 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, no, definitely.
Um, yeah, so I'm gonna shut the recording. Thanks for
Yeah.
tuning in. The 8 people who's gonna hopefully more one day.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
share it with me. I'll try to get it out more places.
cool.